Okay. This is the February 8th, 2024 meeting of Jefferson City Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Dale Vaughn and I'm the chair of the commission. I'd like to remind everyone present to please silence phones and other electronics during the meeting. We will go ahead and have members introduce themselves, starting with Council
Mike Lester, Council Liaison.
Randy Hazelton, P&Z alternate.
Trika Young.
Jacob Robinette.
Penny Quigg, Vice Chair.
Shannon Hawk.
Bunny Tricky Cotton.
Emily Fretwell.
Sarah Michael.
Hank Vogt.
Courtney Black, City Planner.
Eric Barron, Planning Manager. Clint Smith, Director of Planning Protection Services.
Katrina Williams, Senior Planner.
Shane Wade, Public Works. City staff.
And Tiffany Pearson, Administrative Assistant.
David Bangy, City Engineer.
City Code authorizes 9 regular members and 3 alternates. Alternates are designated to vote upon the absence or disqualification of regular members. A quorum of 5 members or alternates is necessary to conduct business. I declare that a quorum is present. There are no members absent this evening, correct? Right. Is it Tom? Tom Waterhouse, excuse me. Waterhouse is absent. Are there any members who are disqualified from voting on any agenda item? Okay, the voting members are everyone present?
No. Everyone except Sarah.
It's like always.
Oh, alternate, sorry. So, sorry.
Yeah, so one regular member absent, Tom. So Randy is the senior alternate, and so he can vote.
But it's nice you're here. Well, I'm happy to be present.
Normally I'd ask if someone is in attendance to present this case. And that would be
It's a city-sponsored case.
So, are there any questions or are there any requests for continuance?
Nope.
Are there any requests to reorder the agenda? No.
Nope.
Courtney, will you please read the format of the hearing and order of testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to briefly describe the procedures of the commission. The proceedings of the meeting are being recorded, so please project your voice when speaking and give your name and address for the record. The standard order of each case is as follows. After introduction of the request by city staff, the applicant or their consultant will provide information on the request. The presentation by the applicant shall be limited to 10 minutes unless additional time is granted by the commission. The applicant should have 3 additional minutes for closing testimony if requested. We will then ask to hear from supporters of the request. We will then ask to hear from opponents of the request. We will then ask to hear from anyone else who wishes to speak on the request. Testimony shall be limited to 3 minutes each unless additional time is granted by the commission. City staff will then give their recommendations on the request. In order to reduce the time necessary to hear an application, references to printed materials including applicable findings and staff reports cannot be read into the record unless directed by the commission. The commission will close testimony from the floor. The commission will then discuss the proposal, then publicly make its determination with reasons. The form motion shall be positive, that is that the motion shall be made to accept the request as presented or with modifications, stipulations, or conditions. A final vote will be taken with ayes in favor and nays opposed. The chair shall announce the results of the vote, specifying the number of votes cast in favor and the number of votes cast against. The following documents are entered as exhibits for all items under consideration at this meeting. The City Code of the City of Jefferson as amended, comprehensive plan and land use map, copies of applications under consideration, the list of property owners to whom notices were sent, the affidavit of publication of the public notice in the newspaper, copies of drawings, plans, and renderings under consideration, letters and memorandum from staff reports, minutes of proceedings, correspondence or other materials submitted by the public or the applicant, rules of procedure for the Jefferson City Planning and Zoning Commission. These items are public record and available for inspection through the Department of Planning and Protective Services or through the Office of the City Clerk. Please be advised that any items that are presented, distributed, or otherwise received pertaining to the cases under consideration become the property of the Commission. This includes any photographs, drawings, petitions, and letters. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Courtney. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as printed? All in favor say aye, or excuse me. Motion, sorry. Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. Motion carries. I have a motion to approve the regular minutes of December 14th, 2023.
So moved. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. And have we received any communications on this? Okay, moving on to the case P24001. And Courtney, you're presenting the case, is that right?
Is this PowerPoint selected? Or
Ready for the presentation?
We can hear you now.
Okay, perfect.
did you have anything?
All right.
Hold on one second.
Yeah, 1 second, Julie.
Great.
Can we get the slideshow? Select.
I'll share my screen if that's okay.
Oh.
Make sure you're talking to her, whatever you.
So Julie, we're just trying to, she's, Julie, are you saying you have the slideshow?
Yes.
Okay, so she has, do we want to do it that way, or do you all have a separate slideshow? Sorry, Julie, just give us 1 second. Yeah. Technology.
You want me to minimize ours?
What did you have to show?
Well, I was gonna do a brief introduction to.
Okay.
But I can, I don't have to.
Okay. Just skip ahead to the.
Yeah.
Okay. So, it's a comprehensive plan amendment. Yep. We have consultants, Julie Kelso, also Isaac Sims and Dave Robinette, who are associated with putting this plan together, basically through Campo, through the MPO, and turn it over to them for a presentation and overview of the contents of it. So.
Are we doing this screen too, or are we just?
So I think they alternate them, and so it'd be on those two screens.
There's one behind us and that one over there.
Correct. I guess they
This one
alternate.
has a glare on it from right here, we can't see it.
It's like it on the movies with my kids and they sit in the front row.
Yeah. Julie, you look great, by the way. I think we're ready for your presentation. We'll move on. We don't have one of the screens up, but we'll all. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, my name is Julie Kelso. I'm with Craft and Toll, and we have been working with Campo for the last couple of years on the update, the active transportation plan. And so tonight we're going to give you a little overview of that report and what all is contained within it for your consideration. First of all, whenever we think about bicycling in particular, a lot of people, this is the image that comes to a lot of people's minds, right? People in spandex and people on expensive bikes and getting out in large groups and taking over the road and things of that nature. But whenever we talk about an active transportation plan and how we're planning in communities, we're really looking at things like this. How do people get to school? How do people get to work? How do they get from point A to point B, either by bike or by foot? And so this plan takes those things into consideration. So we are, this is a transportation plan. It's not a recreation plan. Very oftentimes, recreation is a fabulous byproduct of these types of networks. But first and foremost, we are considering how people move in and around their community. So the first section of that report is called Discovery. And so it lays out how the document has been generated. And it's really kind of a three-part process. The first is moving through technical assessments, things that we can analyze, data crunch, numbers. But then there's a lot of things whenever you think about creating a bicycle and pedestrian network that are very deeply rooted in individual community preferences, the things that impact the way that people want to move around their community. And so those community assessments are very critical in the planning process. And that's where we have a lot of our public engagement centered so that we can really assess what's important to the community. And then we take those two different levels of assessment, and from there, We apply best practices nationally that help us move through the process of determining where different types of facilities are appropriate in the community, and develop a network, and then develop an implementation system that supports that network and really walks through how to get that implemented and built. So very quickly, we'll go through some of this. I'm not going to belabor these slides, but in that early technical assessment, we look at a lot of different things. We look at health indicators. We look at adult obesity and physical activity and health outcomes. We take a look at what the trends are in the community. So here, we're not only looking at 5 different communities and 2 counties, and so we're trying to assess this data on various levels. We also look at demographic data, what's happening with population trends, other economic and social indicators in each one of the communities. All of these things kind of help us gauge what this network might look and feel like. We also take a look at state and regional plans. How do you tie into what's happening regionally around you? What are some of the other efforts that have been going on? What are the priorities of either your DOT or your state parks, things of that nature? Then we move into more localized assessments. So the first one of those are roadway assessments. So we are looking at your average daily traffic, your roadway width, how many lanes, posted speeds, crash data, all of these things, because these types of networks are often a combination of an on-street facility and an off-street facility. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So we want to really understand your existing roadway network. From that, we generate a couple of different suitability assessments. One is where do we have streets that we could look at having shared facility types? So what types of streets are going to be appropriate for allowing some of these uses on the street as it stands today versus on-street suitability, where we might need to make some changes to your existing road so that we allocate space for different types of uses, but where do we have opportunities for that? So this is kind of just a first blush at saying, okay, do some places rise to the top? Where do we have some opportunities here? We also look at your existing trails network, what parts of town are being serviced by those existing trails, where your intersections are. We look at your existing sidewalks and where we have planned sidewalks that haven't been constructed yet. We look at your bus and your public transportation network, and we assess for critical sidewalk gaps and areas of potential walkability. Then we flip over and assess things that have to do with land development. So we look at land use, population density, and then we run an assessment on value per acre that helps us see where we have some areas that might be have some inequities, and where we might have some additional need for active transportation types. Then we do an assessment based on your trip generators. So what types of places do people generally have the need to be able to walk or bicycle to and from? And so we look at the location of those different types of trip generators as shown here on the slide, whether they be essential services like grocery stores and pharmacies, or public services, trail access points, neighborhood centers, schools, parks. We score those, and then those result in a heat map that that shows us where we have a concentration of those different types of trip generators. And so as you can see on this map, so this is the whole Campo region, with Jefferson City being right here in the center of it. You see that a lot of these trip generators, the hotspots are really occurring in Jefferson City, and especially as you get closer into the city core, to the city center. Then the second section of the report moves over into the vision and some of these community assessments. So we start to look at why people walk or bike, how comfortable are they biking or walking, where are they currently going, where do they want to go, how do they want to get there? And those are things that we can't find out from a technical assessment. So we differentiate and we recognize the fact that there are user groups, populations, and facilities for folks who want to bike or walk. This is their choice. And then we also realize that there are populations who may not be able to drive because they are very young or very old. They may be outside of a driving age, or they need to be able to bike or walk to their jobs or to school or what have you. We also recognize that there's a wide spectrum, just speaking about bicycles for the next 2 or 3 slides here, that there's a wide spectrum of different types of bicycle facilities. And so on the left, you see trails and side paths. Those are very separated. They're very dedicated. You don't have to interface with vehicular traffic. And then as we kind of move on the spectrum from kind of our premier facility for separation and safety being a trail or a side path, and whenever I say side path, I mean basically a trail that is parallel to a road or located within a street right of way. So like a really wide sidewalk or a trail paralleling a road. Then we can move on down that spectrum into buffered bicycle lanes where we get into the street, but we still have some separation from traffic, into a standard bicycle lane, and then moving down another step further. Those are called sharrows right here, this symbol painted on the street that indicates it's a shared lane with vehicles. And then we obviously have a lot of streets that don't have any sort of facility on them. And so, we always like to note that as our level of stress decreases, the stress that a user has on that facility, those tend to be a little bit less easy to implement. They can take up more space, they can be more costly. And as we move down to the other end of the spectrum, our level of stress increases, but those can generally be much easier to implement. So we recognize that this is a trade-off that has to be made and a consideration in the planning process. So one of the things that came out of this project was surveying your local populations in terms of what their tolerance is for level of stress. And so the user group in the red has the highest stress tolerance. Those are the spandex guys that you'll see riding wherever they want to go, regardless of facility type. They're very confident. And that was about 12% of the survey respondents, which is a little bit higher than you would find nationally. And then we have about another 36% in blue that are enthused and confident. And that means that they really do prefer to be on a trail or some sort of a separated or protected facility where they have some protection from vehicles, but they will ride in the road if they need to. And then you have a interested but concerned group in green, and those folks want to bike or walk, but they really, really would prefer a separated facility. And so that's where we start to think about children or new riders, or maybe folks that are a little bit older or whatever, but people that really want that additional safety. And then we always have a segment of the population that says, it doesn't really matter what you provide. I just really don't have an interest. And so, and that's fine too. So that brings us to our first workshop, where we're really trying to assess from the community what some of these needs and desires are. And during that first workshop, we met with several different stakeholder groups that were focused around things like education or healthcare or infrastructure or community services. And we had a lot of great conversations with them about identifying some of the issues and opportunities within Jefferson City as well as the larger Campo region. We also asked folks that attended those meetings in person what those facility preferences were. And that feedback tracked very similarly with the public survey that was issued online. So down at the bottom, where you've got the orange and the green, those are our separated trails, and then in the orange are the protected on-street facilities. So you see that 23% and 38%, that's showing a large part of your respondents that really want those safer, more separated types of facilities. And that's very, very common. As part of these public meetings, we asked folks, where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? And we documented that with these public meetings. And then we have a steering committee that has guided this process. And in our first meeting with them, we walked through an exercise to establish some guiding principles for this project. And those principles included, now these were guiding principles for the plan. And we were saying that that what we were going to develop was a network that was going to be safe. It was going to provide opportunities for diversity and inclusion, so it was welcoming to all types of ages and abilities and populations. That we wanted to reinforce and strengthen economic development opportunities, that we wanted to be a well-connected network, we needed to be accessible to all users, and that it needed to really reinforce community to develop a healthier and more resilient region. So those were the guiding principles for the plan at large. Then we had some plan goals that really drilled down on each one of those guiding principles. Then we move into the next section of the report, which is we go in that section of the report, it's more technical. We go into explanation of different types of bicycle and pedestrian facilities, what they mean, what they look like, where they occur, where they're appropriate. But for purposes of this presentation, I'll say we can largely put those in 3 different buckets. So on the left in the green, we have those separated facilities like trails or side paths or sidewalks or even cycle tracks that might be in the road, but they do have a physical barrier from vehicular traffic. Then we have protected facilities, which there's a whole array of cycle tracks, and so some fall more under the separated category and some fall more under the protected category. But in this blue category, we are in the street and we have some level of protection. And then our red category are shared facilities, such as those sharrows. And then we have some other applications of advisory bike lanes and signed routes. And then the traditional bike lane kind of straddles that because they are in the street, they do have dedicated space, but they don't have a lot of protection per se. And so that section of the report really drills down on some of those issues. If you're interested in demonstrates, again, how and where these are appropriate, how they would be implemented, and some of the factors that go into that facility selection. The next section of the report starts to drill down on the network. So as we were developing this network, we had a very clear approach of some things that we were trying to accommodate. So we wanted to make sure that we were consolidating previous plans. We were evaluating those plans to see if they were still relevant with what we were hearing from the community today. We wanted to make sure we're prioritizing safety, connection. Again, those are coming out of those guiding principles, considering new connections, developing an on-street network. You already have some really cool trails, and you always want to have this spine network of your most protected, most safe, and probably most used trails, and then you have kind of a secondary network that really ties into that premier facility. So we are also looking at where we would upgrade existing facilities, fill in critical network gaps, and then make sure that we are recognizing the fact that one of the biggest issues that Jefferson City and the Campo region really has in terms of overcoming for active transportation is your topography, and how do we work with that, and what can we do for some specialized facilities that really address some of the topographical challenges that you have. As part of the project, there's a lot of field work. We'll create a preliminary network, and then we'll go out and we'll look and we'll measure and we'll go, okay, does this really work once you get out in the field and see what you're up against? And so we want to field verify that. And so from that, a network is developed. And on this map, the green lines are trails and the purple lines are side paths. So the green plus the purple together equals, your kind of highest level of separation and safety. And then we also show complete streets, which are streets that accommodate as many different transportation types as possible. Proposed cycle tracks, bike lanes, alley conversions, which we have in a couple of locations, which you've got some neat opportunities in the core area of your city where you have alleys that can potentially be repurposed, that not only still accommodate service vehicles, but they can also accommodate bicyclists and pedestrians. They can be renovated to do that. And we talked about some examples in Northwest Arkansas where this has happened, and it's also opened up new opportunities for economic development and giving buildings a backside that they can utilize for for commercial purposes. So there are some interesting opportunities there. And then we also look at climbing lanes and those sharrow opportunities. So the sharrows being in yellow. This is probably my favorite map. I love this because it tells you very quickly how the network has a hierarchy. So everything in that dark green, this is network purpose. So everything in dark green, this is where our regional routes really start to pop up. So those routes might be different types of facilities. They are different types of facilities, and they are a collection of different types of facilities, but this starts to indicate how we can start to move from Jefferson City out to our neighboring communities and through the counties. And then we also address the pedestrian network in particular. So this one not only looks at our priority sidewalks, which I'll come back and address here in just a moment, which are shown in the magenta color, but it's overlaid with those greens and those purples, because it's very important to note that those trails and those side paths are a very critical component of the pedestrian network. So it's not just sidewalks alone. So regarding priority sidewalks, those are areas that we have indicated to have potentially having capital investment from the city, because they do address priority connections within the town. And so that does not negate or override, your development-driven sidewalk construction requirements by any stretch of the imagination. These are just places that we are considering for. They are so important that the city may want to think about acting on those outside of a development process. So the network totals come out from the network, which this was a very iterative process. We went through multiple versions of this network map, but basically we have about 98 miles of multi-use facilities proposed. Now, this is not just in Jefferson City. Now, some of these are long routes that are getting us out to Holt Summit or what have you. We have about 29 miles of pedestrian facilities, those priority pedestrian facilities identified, and then still about 268 miles of shared on-street facilities. That brings us to our second workshop, where we've got a network in place now, and we're going to bring it back to the community for comments and refinements. And so at that second community workshop, we got out with various groups to do community workshops. And so these were opportunities to get out and explore the built environment and the different pedestrian issues that need to be addressed within that built environment. So not only looking at accessibility, but also walkability and things that need to be tweaked or modified within the built environment to help make places more inviting. So we're showing good examples as well as showing some things that might need to be considered. And these are usually really great resources and tools to get not only the community folks out for this, but also community leadership out to see things maybe in a new way that they haven't thought about before as they're moving around town. As part of the second public meeting, we were really going to be out in the community. So how do you take maps to everyone whenever you're out and about? We developed business cards that had a QR code that could take you to a website that had a lot of project information on it, as well as some interactive maps so people could give some feedback. And then there was an additional survey on there, because we were going to not only host a public meeting at City Hall, but then after that, we were going out for Living Windows on a second night to really get out into the community and get folks' feedback. So now that we've got a network in place that we're trying to get feedback on, we also want to find out what people's priorities are. What are people's most important priorities for developing or for identifying which projects really rise to the top? And so this is some photos from our next steering committee meeting and some of our small community leaders that we had invited in specifically to address their concerns. And here are some of the prioritization responses. So we had this at Living Windows, as well as with an online survey that folks could take from scanning the QR code on that business card that we were handing out at all of our public input sessions. And then I know that Katrina had an awful lot of those cards as well, and was giving them out at every opportunity that she had with additional public involvement opportunities. So This prioritization, we have this separated out into two different formats. One was your most important attributes of sidewalk projects for the pedestrian realm, and then the other was for kind of that bicycle and pedestrian network combined. And then we took that prioritization to start to identify how we are going to implement the network. So from the large overview perspective here, we had about 238 individual segments of facility types on the combined bicycle pedestrian network. Now, this did not include sidewalks. This was the other network, the bicycle and pedestrian network. So those ranged over about 8 different types of facilities and 5 different communities and unincorporated areas. And so how do you prioritize 238 individual segments? It's a big undertaking. So what we did was package those. We put those into logical packages that would connect you from one location to another, and we boiled that down into 69 packages that were then prioritized and ranked and sorted. 54 of those packages are in Jefferson City proper. And so those are then rated and scored based on those prioritization outcomes that we received not only from the steering committee and at Living Windows, but also with the online survey. So we then scored these as tier 1 through tier 5 projects to tell us where our highest priority projects were. Then here's a listing of how those tier 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 projects look by segment, and that we give you how it was scored, and all of that's explained in the report document. But then we also take a look at phasing. So we say, okay, we know where our high priority projects are, but we also want to look at a phasing ordering, because we might have a really high priority project that might not connect as efficiently back into an existing network as it should. So we use those two maps simultaneously when making decisions on which projects to pursue next. We did the same thing with the priority sidewalks. Those are also packaged. We had 15 packages of sidewalks. We weren't just saying this street or this street. These were kind of more packaged by neighborhood, if you will. And 9 of those packages are in Jefferson City. And then again, they are weighted, scored, and placed into a tier. The report also has a section on additional recommendations. So it's not just about the physical network, but it's also about how you program, promote, maintain, and accommodate people and really make this a usable network for everyone. And then in the very back of the report document are local plans. And so Jefferson City, I need to look back at my report. I don't remember if it was 4 or 5 different local areas where we zoom in and show you the bicycle and pedestrian network by facility type. We show you the tiered packages so you can see where your priorities are. And then we flip over and we look at your sidewalk network as well as your tiered sidewalks, priority sidewalks as well. So that's all broken out at a more fine grain of detail where you can really get in there and see the details of it. So that is how your report is put together. And let's see here how I can stop sharing for now, and I can pull it back up if y'all have any specific questions about it and we need to go back and look at anything there.
Anybody have any questions so far for Julie? Anybody have questions for Julie? Pull the thing up. Anybody? I'll just say that my dad, who will be turning 75 in March, he rides his bike pretty much every day, and but it's an electric bike. And so the topography is so steep and up and down that it's really hard for the older community to probably ride bikes. So having that electric bike really helps him out, and it's crazy how much weight he's lost just from using the electric bike. He doesn't use it constantly, so he will, pedal when it's not straight up a hill. And he really enjoys the new bike lanes and loves the outdoors. He pretty much does it every day.
It's a game changer, and I think it'll be a big game changer for you all in particular.
Anybody else have any comments? Okay, I think we're good. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I guess Courtney, do you have anything to add to this at all?
I was just gonna do a brief staff report. And then lead into the program.
Okay, so what we'll do now is learn from that. So yeah, Courtney, you
Can
want
we
to
go through those motions before the public hearing? I mean, it is a formal comprehensive plan amendment.
Right. So that's what I was trying to figure out is
at staff level.
right. Yeah, that's fine with me.
I thought you.
I mean, we can, unless you want to do it now. Or you want me to go through the process now? I mean, this is a little, sorry, it's a little confusing, but we've had the presentation. We would then go through, I'll go through the public hearing part of it. Is that what you mean? Do you want me to go through it first?
Is the PowerPoint working?
Well, I'll go ahead and start. So just as a vascular system is important to an organism, so is the transportation with its intricate parts and pieces. So is the transportation system with its intricate parts and pieces, such as sidewalks, bike lanes, and trails important to the city and providing quality of life. Active transportation is a means of access to or for goods and services to get from one place to another. For goods and it is a means of access to goods, services, and destinations of many kinds, including things like bus stops, recreation, landmarks, and etc. And active transportation can be a means of access to recreation and exercise and healthy living. The comprehensive plan addresses this in different areas. It acknowledges the importance of active transportation in many areas of the plan. And I have both copies of the plan and also the active transportation plan and the comprehensive plan are available online as well for review. And like I was saying, the comprehensive plan acknowledges the importance of active transportation in different areas such as Chapter 4, Economic Development, Chapter 5, Transportation, Chapter 8, Capital Culture and Healthy Living, and then Chapter 9, which is the action plan, which goes into detail about how to accomplish the goals and objectives of the conference plan. I did have a handout that I spread around. I don't think everyone got it, but essentially what I did was I took portions of Chapter 9, the action plan, which goes into detail about the goals and objectives relating to transportation. And so that is available for your all's review. And then also the role of the Planning and Zoning Commission for comprehensive plan amendment is both to review and then make the final decision. So there are review criteria tied to a comprehensive plan amendment. Those review criteria with staff comments are also available in the staff report located in the CAS packet. And finally, staff does recommend approval of the comprehensive plan amendment to adopt the 2023 Capital Area Active Transportation Plan as a component of the Activate Jefferson City 2040 comprehensive plan, that 2021 comprehensive plan update. There's a single form of motion that would approve resolution 2024-01 to adopt the 2023 Capital Area Active Transportation Plan as a component of the comprehensive plan. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If there are any questions, I'll go.
Anybody have any questions for? Good job. Thank you very much. Okay, we will now, and there's no one else to present the case, no one from Toll, right? No question for staff. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this request? 3-minute time limit, just saying. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition of this request? Is there anyone who would like to just speak on this request? Seeing none, we will now close testimony. Eric, you don't have anything else to add to that, right?
I acknowledge that Katrina Williams put an awful lot of work into
Yes.
this.
Thank you.
She's here this evening. We've processed it at the staff level through the planning division side of it. But, so I believe Katrina is in the process of contacting the other member communities of Campo, so the small cities and the counties, to give them the opportunity to adopt this plan at their jurisdiction levels as well, which is, again, a lot of work. We are planning a presentation in front of the City Council at the next council meeting by the consultant. And so a similar presentation as to what you received here tonight. But as an amendment to the comprehensive plan, the Planning and Zoning Commission is, by law, kind of the keepers of the comprehensive plan. And so its adoption this evening is an actual final action. You know, whereas most actions go on to the City Council from this body, this one does not. Similar to when the comprehensive plan was adopted a couple of years ago, it was by this body. So there's a resolution in your packets, and so that's actually what you'd be voting on. Can you advance the slide to the form of motion slide?
Katrina, how long have you been on this project?
We started in 2022, actually. Yeah, so we had a little bit of a delay for some stuff that was going on, but so it's been a little over a year.
So again, up on the screen is the recommended form of motion. As I mentioned, there's that informational presentation in front of the City Council to be held. We've scheduled it for their next meeting on the 20th. But certainly if there's any questions, the consultants are still connected to the meeting. And Katrina, and then also David Bangy with the Public Works Department has been very involved in the formation of the plan, at least at the staff level. You know, a lot of the sidewalks and bike lanes and greenways, et cetera, you know, across the city, go through his office in their design and so any questions, any thoughts? We're all here. I'd love to hear them.
Well, we were voted, what, #1 beautiful small town, Ray McNally, right?
Correct.
True, yeah.
True.
So might as well have good transportation around the city to see it.
Yep.
And then recently, a real estate thing came up in front of just the Board of Realtors, and that was, wasn't that something?
Nationwide.
It was just, it was, we're ranked #2 in the country of all cities, all sites, real estate markets. People want to buy here, we don't have enough houses to sell, regardless of driveways and streets and sidewalks, we don't have enough.
Yeah, that's good. Not good about the amount of houses, so.
Okay. I would say, David, you are one of the red, correct?
Well, it's interesting how, the category, the red category, certainly the sort of I'll go anywhere, anytime. But certainly I think there's maybe a difference between, the person who just goes out and rides their bike to race or whatever. But certainly I'm out there all the time, but I'm out there for multiple reasons. I ride to work every day. I ride to the doctor's office. I ride to the dentist. I go pick up groceries on my bike. So, I think there's opportunities to do that sort of thing. And I think it really does, in my own experience, it really does sort of, not only those health benefits and those benefits of getting cars off the road and having, a greener, healthier environment, all those things, but still I think there's a sense of community that sort of happens when you encounter someone, someone else who's on the trail or someone else, who maybe you say a few words to as you pass them by on the Greenway Trail, and people that you would never meet in any other sort of situation in life. And it's sort of this very community building in my mind, to have those encounters with those people. So for me, it's the plan it's very grand. Goodness gracious, if we could get a quarter of it implemented in my lifetime, that would be fantastic. But certainly But certainly, yeah, the answer to the question is yes, and I really do think that this has a huge impact on our community.
And some streets don't really accommodate bike lanes that well. I always bring up my street, Morrill Drive. You know, it's parts of Morrill are really wide, other parts are very narrow, and a lot of people don't pay attention to the bike lane, so they get angry. You know, even though it's a bike lane, they don't know it because they don't pay attention. So adding, like updating that bike lane with flashers or something like over time would be nice.
Right, and certainly, you know, it's very interesting if you read, you know, some of the comments that people left, you know, at the back of the plan. There's, I think, like 10 pages of comments from people. And if you sort of read between the lines, it seems like people are actually asking for the same thing. There are a certain number of folks who are vehicle drivers who commented that, you know, they don't want to see the bikes, you know, they want the roads for cars. And there's a certain number of people who ride their bikes who say, well, I don't really want to be on the street. Well, in some ways, they're asking for the same thing. They're asking for a facility that would perhaps separate those two groups of people. You know, so it's really interesting when you read it that, you know, even though they seem to be diametrically opposed when you first glance, they're really asking for the same thing. So I think this plan, you know, helps, you know, lead us in a direction where we can sort of address both of those issues.
I didn't really notice it in the plan, but is there ever any thought about as far as electric bikes, scooters, and things like that, charging stations? Is there been?
Certainly, we did discuss that as we were developing the plan, and you know, and certainly Julie and all of the staff, we had discussions about that. Because in some ways, here it's two different things. You know, if you're on an acoustic bike, a human-powered bike, you know, certainly you're trying to negotiate the city kind of along this flattest path because that's, you know, it offers you the least resistance. But certainly there's places that people would probably really like to go that are just hilly. You just can't get there in any other way but climbing a hill. And so, you know, do you try to create the plan such that it's always the easiest path, or do you create the plan in a way that really gets people where they want to go more directly? And so I think one of the key ones in my own mind is, you know, I think in the plan there's a recommendation, you know, for a side path along Southwest Boulevard, you know, coming up from Missouri Boulevard to get up to Stadium. It's a pretty wicked hill, you know, and if you were just left on, you know, a regular human-powered bike, maybe you make the choice of going around. You know, it's a long way around, but if you follow the Greenway Trail down and you get on Miller Street and come back around through Lincoln University and you come back around, you know, you can get around the hill, but it's like 4 or 5 extra miles. Whereas if I'm just doing that for, you know, transportation purposes, yeah, it would really be nicer if I could just, you know, go the third of a mile and get to the top of that hill. And so, yeah, certainly there's been a lot of discussions about that. And so I think the plan kind of merges, you know, those ideas together. I mean, I think there are some direct routes, and then there's some other routes, particularly the ones that kind of go out towards the community, other communities that are more, you know, sort of try to pick the easier path kind of along the creek, which is certainly more beautiful, but then also kind of flatter and so more recreational in some sense.
I have an electric scooter, and there's a weight limit on it. Depending on what time of year it is, usually it's a little bit more difficult to ride. But I know what you mean by the path of least resistance. You know, because there's definitely ways you can go that are more level, and also the temperature too. Because there's times that, you know, I may ride a bike somewhere, but it's so hot. But, you know, if I'm coming here, I'd be sweating so bad by the time I got here, I can't do it. You know, so.
Right.
Depends on what you want to do.
Yeah, we certainly looked at that, particularly for someone who might be wanting to commute to work, for instance. You know, if we could create a pathway that's generally flat for them, then they have a lot better chance of being able to get to work without being all sweaty. You know, and so that's, you know, that's the detriment, because there's, you know, there's a lot of folks who show up at work and it's not like they have an office or something to go to, you know, clean up, and you know, they're just doing that in the bathroom. There's no, you know, so that's part of it too. But so yeah, if we can create a way for them to get to work or otherwise easier without having to get all sweaty, then that's certainly a bonus.
Does anybody else have any questions for David or the staff? You know, or Julie wasn't? No. Okay. Well, thank you, David, Katrina, and staff. Great job. Okay,
I do want.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So once, I know as far as the comprehensive plan is concerned, the other parts of it, so by implementing this into it, if there's something that we see that no longer fits or needs to be changed, how easy is it to amend this? Do all 68 of these packages have to be implemented as written, or can we change or address or customize this to the situation?
Well, it is a plan. There's a lot of components in that plan.
Julie's back. She wants
And how are you, Julie? You want to address that?
Sure. So, no, there's nothing about that. There's nothing about the plan that says you have to put these in a certain order or do them a certain way. That's simply a guide to say, we don't want to just leave you with 238 segments and go, good luck, good luck figuring out where you start or how you really tackle this thing. So those are not hard and fast, you've got to do this one first or second, because we recognize in the document that even with those priority projects, we still give you a phasing plan along with that, so you can use the two together and kind of think about, okay, there's a lot of phase one projects, and let's look at the priority projects. Or if we're looking at a priority project, let's see what phase it's in. Why is it in maybe a little bit later phase? Well, it might be because it didn't directly connect back into the network. And so you've got two different sets of tools there to utilize, but it's not a hard and fast rule. And what I didn't mention and really should have is that if a project of opportunity comes up, meaning you get a partner or a community partner, like either a local large corporation or a university or a health facility that says this is really important for us, we want to partner with you on getting this implemented, or if you secure a grant or secure some kind of funding, all these are projects of opportunity, and it's very clearly recognized that those we welcome those, and as those happen, that we want to make sure that we are poised to implement those. So the rest of it is they're tools for utilization for implementation.
Okay, I guess I didn't specify my question correctly. My question was, by putting this in the comprehensive plan, are we married to the whole thing, or can we choose as time goes on what to implement and what not to implement?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a plan. Yeah. There's a lot in there. We don't have the resources to implement it all. So yes, there will have to be decisions made.
I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
So.
Anyone else have any questions for? Anyone else wants to speak on this request, right? No more questions? Okay. All right, seeing none, we will now close testimony. And Courtney, do you have a staff report? It's quite crazy. We're not really, not going on city council.
Ditto.
Or it is going on city council, but not for the.
We're going to go for an informational presentation similar to what was presented tonight. But you all will be the deciding entity on the adoption of this plan into the conference.
You gave the staff report.
Yeah.
Shane, engineering report. All right.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Once again, do any commissioners have any questions for staff? None. All right. Seeing none, who would like to make a motion?
Motion to approve resolution RSPZ 2024-01 in order to approve the requested comprehensive plan amendment to adopt the 2023 capital area active transportation plan as a component of active Jefferson City 2024 comprehensive plan. 2040 comprehensive plan.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. I believe that's it. And we'll go on to city council, the presentation on city council. There'll be no vote here. It passes, and we'll move on to other business. Prior cases by Mayor.
Yes, thank you. So, the 3 prior zoning cases from a couple months ago. 602 Ellis Boulevard, rezoning of a small one house on Ellis Boulevard was approved by City Council. The landfills special exception permit, again, was approved by the City Council. And Ridgecrest Section 4, that subdivision plat, which was the next phase in the Ridgecrest development, again, approved by the City Council. It kind of segues into looking forward to next month. So far, we do not have any applications filed, but the application deadline is Monday, and then I'm anticipating a few to show up on that day, perhaps, and hopefully housing projects, okay? And so I know that the Ridgecrest development, even though, not a single housing unit, it's approved for like triplexes and duplexes. Nothing's been built yet. Even though Section 1 was approved back in 2015, I think. Up on the top of the hill of that particular development, which is there at the intersection of Stadium and Edgewood. But anyway, and so then the Section 4 that just got approved is a section that would lead up to that top of the hill. The roadway section going from the dental office on Stadium up the hill. But I believe their intent is to go ahead and finalize the development, go ahead and finish platting out the rest of it. So Section 5. So hopefully that'll be incoming as they put the pieces together for that. And so anyway, long story saying, so far we haven't received anything for March, but I do anticipate a couple applications, so please keep the date open on your calendar.
Yeah, I met with Paul Sampson, and he mentioned that the lots were starting to open up for the triplexes and things like that, so it's good news.
Yes, very good news.
He's alive and well.
Yes, Mr. Sampson, who's appeared in front of us many, many times as a representative of the private sector, Central Missouri Professional Services, transitioned over into JC Rep, the Jefferson City Regional Economic Partnership. Almost as I'm not sure what his official title is, but he's kind of a project manager over there. And so looking, at several different projects, and has his name as a contact for a downtown convention center. And so there's information on that on the website, and some stories that have come out in the newspaper recently, and then several other initiatives that they're doing. And so certainly a lot of expertise that moved from the private sector over into the public realm.
He's perfect for that position. Glad to see that he's there. He's happy.
I'm telling you, it's my mood too.
Okay. Any questions other than that?
Eric, have you received any requests or anything on those projects over on El Dorado?
The only informal thing that I've heard is more of a timing issue. So not any particular reason that they haven't moved forward with construction, just a timing of that particular contractor.
I drove over there today and there's a sign up that says plumbing by somebody.
Nobody there.
So that's.
And I thought, well, does that mean?
I would interpret that as good news.
Yeah.
What about NH Shepherd's? Next to NH Shepherd's, that development there, off of.
And so, if you recall, I believe it was a preliminary plat that came in front of you for a duplex development off of St. Mary's Boulevard, right next to the Budweiser distributor. That project will not be proceeding. The property has been.
That's right, I heard.
By the county, or at least part of it. Not sure they've released all their plans on that.
Well, I do believe it's the location of the new juvenile detention facility.
Okay.
That's right.
That's appropriate. Yeah. Next day.
In the filters, right?
Yeah.
And so there is a
news of the building being the shoe factory being purchased as well for office.
Yes.
State's been spending some money.
Yes. Today's front page, I believe it was. I interpret as very good news. Rehabbing an old building like that takes tremendous resources. Takes a certain type of occupant. There have been various plans kind of envisioned for that area, some very interesting plans too. Seeing that in the paper today is, I believe, a very positive move for that side of the city.
Anybody else? No? Okay.
Move to adjourn?
Yeah, I declare this meeting adjourned.
Thank you all. Have a happy Valentine's Day.
Go Chiefs!
That's right.
They're starting.
Oh, yeah.
They're starting to go.
Yeah.